Hello and welcome to India's World. Today we are going to discuss the trajectory of India-Bangladesh ties and ask ourselves whether India has let Bangladesh down. When Sheikh Hasina's Awami League won an overwhelming majority in the 2008 elections, the India-Bangladesh relationship suddenly moved into a higher orbit. Bangladesh cracked down on Indian insurgent groups operating out of its territory. Dhaka also arrested and handed over some of the insurgent leaders of these groups to India and tempered the anti-India extremist sentiments in the country. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's visit to India in 2010 and the Indian Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's visit to Bangladesh in 2011 projected a bright future for the bilateral relationship. However, there have been some hiccups and the full potential of the relationship is yet to be realized. Where are India-Bangladesh ties headed? Why has the initial momentum of improving the relationship suddenly slowed down? Why has the government in New Delhi not been able to reciprocate the friendship of Dhaka? To answer these questions, I have with me an amazing panel of experts, 3 former High Commissioners to Bangladesh. We are very lucky to have them together for this discussion. We have with us Ambassador Dev Mukherjee. He was in Bangladesh from 1995 to 2000. And you've also been head of India-Bangladesh Track 2 dialogue between 2004 and 2007. We have Ambassador Veena Sikri. She was there 3 years after Ambassador Dev Mukherjee, from 2003 to 2006. And you're currently a professor in Bangladesh Studies at Jamia Millia Islamia. And we have Ambassador Rajeev. He followed Veena Sikri 3 years later, 2009 to 2012, and you were in Dhaka when the land boundary agreement and the Tista Accord were negotiated. So I welcome all of you to this conversation. Let me begin with you, Ambassador Mukherjee. How would you describe the current state of India-Bangladesh relationship? Would you say that the kind of attention the relationship deserves is getting that attention from the government?
I think the relations are excellent. And particularly if you look at the framework agreement and cooperation signed during Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's visit in September 2011, it lays out an incredible framework within which we can operate. But having said that, I am sorry, I am not sure that New Delhi is investing sufficient political capital into this relationship. There are areas where I think we are lacking in adequate progress.
Okay. Ambassador Sikri, when Sheikh Hasina came to power, the relationship really got a boost. Do you think the Awami League government has met India's major concerns and expectations?
I think that one important point I'd like to bring out, I think the most important aspect of the 2008 elections for me was one that, of course, Awami League got overwhelming support, but they got support from the people, from the youngsters, on a basis of a manifesto which was tremendous and very much what India has always had in mind from a neighbor like Bangladesh. Good foreign relationship, friendship towards all, bringing back secularism, having the war crimes trial, putting closure to history, economic prosperity. That was a great prospect for India. I think that Sheikh Hasina definitely put every effort into the relationship with India, and I think we saw with the first 2 visits, as Ambassador Mukherjee has mentioned, they were great outcomes, and both India and Bangladesh are definitely on the same wavelength as far as wanting a good relationship is concerned, as far as understanding and appreciating that friendship between the 2 countries is a win-win situation. The fault, I think, has been in the implementation. And I think here, certainly on the Indian side, I would say that Indian government has not given enough attention to implement the greatest expectations on from Bangladesh as regards the Tista river water agreement sharing and the land boundary agreement. Now, land boundary, I would say here that from the Bangladesh side, I would say that unfortunately, because of these inadequacies on the Indian side, this debate has come in Tista and transit. If no Tista, then no transit.
We'll come to the specifics in a bit. Ambassador Mitter, one of India's concerns was about terrorism and about Indian insurgent groups operating out of Bangladeshi territory. So Sheikh Hasina cracked down on militant organizations in Bangladesh which had links with Pakistan-based terrorist organizations and started arresting and handing over insurgent leaders from India's northeast to us. Now, how has India reciprocated this gesture? It was unthinkable in the previous regime, but has India reciprocated adequately?
I think this was definitely a game changer that this crackdown on the insurgents took place. And it covered not just handing over insurgent leaders, but also discovering arms caches, tracking down on smuggling of fake currency and various other issues, and signing of various security-related agreements, including most recently the extradition agreement. I think we have reciprocated in a number of ways. We have given the largest single credit, $1 billion credit. We have opened the Indian market to practically all Bangladeshi exports, barring just 25 products. We have agreed to set up power connectivity between the two countries, whereby India will export power. So a lot has been done, but nevertheless more needs to be done. And as has been mentioned by the previous speakers, the ratification of the land boundary agreement and the Teesta agreement are major issues that need to be resolved early to realize the full potential of our relationship.
May I add
sure.
a word to what High Commissioner Mehta has so eloquently put out? The two issues on which we have not been able to move happen to be two issues of very considerable political significance in Bangladesh. Therefore, our inability to move on that has political connotations.
We're going to have more discussion on that, but what I wanted to ask you was, consider for the moment the war crimes trials that are going on in Bangladesh. These are people who are collaborators of Pakistanis during the liberation war, but they're also people who are ideologically anti-India. And now they're being tried and put in jail. Now, in no other country in India's immediate neighborhood is a government arguing for secularism in this fashion and tackling Islamic fundamentalism in this manner. Do you think there's adequate appreciation of that in India?
Perhaps not in the media. Though I must add here, Bharat, that the motivation for this was entirely internal. These were issues left unresolved, firstly by Sheikh Mujib to a certain extent, and then of course made far worse in subsequent years under General Ziaur Rahman and so on. So the account of 1971 had to be settled at some point for peace and tranquility to come to the minds of the people of Bangladesh. That is what the Awami League government promised to do in their election manifesto, as was said, and that is what they have done. But yes, as a tangential benefit, you can say, these are indeed the kind of people who want a strong Islamic state in Bangladesh and who are congenitally anti-Indian.
Okay, we need to take a break at this juncture. We'll continue with this interesting discussion after the break. Don't go away. Welcome back. We are discussing the current state of India-Bangladesh relations. Master Mitra, to what extent have the two crucial issues, one of Teesta and the other, the land boundary agreement, to what extent have these two issues and inability to cast them in stone, if you like, although Teesta was an interim agreement, how much has it affected India-Bangladesh ties?
No, these are both extremely important agreements. They have the result of a lot of painstaking work, particularly the land boundary agreement. These are issues left over for many, many decades. So I think, and they are very emotive issues in Bangladesh. So I think every effort needs to be made to resolve these issues, particularly I would say the land boundary agreement, because as I said, this is problems arising right up from 1947. In 1974, an agreement was signed. Much of it was implemented, but it was never fully ratified. This agreement now settles the three major issues of the small section of undemarcated border of 6.1 kilometers, the enclaves, and the adverse possessions. It's a package deal which has to be implemented comprehensively. The problem is that if it is delayed, then unfortunately the ground situation may change and it may become difficult to implement later on, particularly with regard to adverse possessions, where on both sides we are occupying little bits of other person's territories.
Mr. Sikri, how is it that after the debacle of September 2011, when at the last minute India said we can't sign the interim agreement on Teesta water sharing, how come no effort has been made to bring Ms. Mamata Banerjee on board and to tell her that actually it doesn't hurt the interests of West Bengal, that water cannot be stored, nobody owns water, water continues to flow to Bangladesh, it's only a question of taking the ground reality into account and signing an agreement?
Well, I think frankly that there has been inadequate appreciation of the fact that today bordering states, Indian states bordering foreign countries, have a big stake in foreign policy issues. Just like if you look at it earlier on, before the economic reforms in India, the states of India were not even allowed to do economic relations with outside powers, including World Bank or IMF, unless they went through the center. This was forced to be changed. The same thing is true of political relations. And I think that the success of the Ganga Waters Treaty between India and Bangladesh was that at that time the state government led by Jyoti Basu, the West Bengal state government, was allowed to do the negotiations, right from the front, with of course the central government's backing. Now, I think the central government has to go back to this situation. And the same holds of land boundary. It's not so much a situation of political parties at the center, it's a situation of state governments. Assam government has certain points of view, political parties have certain points of views, West Bengal government has views on Teesta. I think that one of the great disadvantages of being slow on both these agreements is that the focus has come on these agreements, and the more difficult it is for Indian government to implement, the more it is adverse for Awami League.
After all, since September 11, a lot of time has passed.
Yes.
The centre did listen to the West Bengal Chief Minister. But what has the West Bengal Chief Minister herself done? If you say you have a stake in foreign policy matters, then show that you appreciate that stake and do something.
Yes, but to do that, now it's become a political game. Okay. Having once missed that point, the political game today is who is going to get the credit for it. I think both on land boundary and on Teesta, this is the political game being played, unfortunately. But it's become linked with the next elections as well. And I think that the other factor to be realized, and this is where the political issue comes in an important way, that even if the Teesta agreement had been signed, would it have made a difference on the ground? Actually, I don't think so, because the agreement that was planned to be signed was dependent, on measuring the water flows, a joint measurement, a joint hydrographic survey.
It was interim. It was interim.
It was interim, exactly. So, as far as the ground situation is concerned, nothing would have changed.
Mr. Mukherjee, what is the political opposition to the land boundary agreement? Teesta, okay, you can be an emotive issue, but land boundary agreement, which is really rationalizing the boundary, why is it being opposed by Mamata Banerjee's Trinamool Congress? BJP has joined hands with it. Assam also has some objections to it.
Well, I think BJP is probably being led by their partners in Assam. I am not sure. No, essentially, Bharat, I think this is a case of a complete lack of application of mind by a section of our political classes. And they are not interested or not focused enough on improving relations with a friendly neighbor. Now, on the Teesta, I mean, let me say, I hear that there is somebody appointed by the West Bengal government who has produced a note which says something not very dissimilar to what the government of India says, but that has been kept under wraps. So if the West Bengal government, for very transient perceived political gain, chooses to block it, then at some point of time, well, I appreciate the point made by Veena, that the states have a stake, and obviously it is the primary business of any government and foreign policy to look after the interests of its own people. But having said that, if you come to the conclusion that some elements are being obstructive for the sake of being obstructive, then I think it is time, perhaps, to quote the rule book and say foreign policy is a matter of the government of India, and it shall sign whatever agreement it deems fit in that light. Now, obviously, it has political implications. Elections are coming up in India. I understand all that. But I am truly dismayed and the lack of application of mind on these issues by some of the political actors involved.
I think if I may just add on the land boundary, the boundary with Bangladesh is our largest boundary. And it's quite self-evident that to settle that once and for all has huge advantages. But there are other aspects also. There's the humanitarian aspect of these people living in enclaves, who are virtually stateless peoples with not getting any facilities from the state at all. That has to be addressed. And the adverse possessions have been areas where there have been flare-ups in the past. Once you settle this, that will lead to better border management. So I think the totality of the picture needs to be seen, and it's a long-term thing.
But what I wanted to really ask you was, and briefly tell me that if land boundary agreement doesn't get ratified by Indian Parliament and Teesta is undoable at present, is there a case for emphasizing other aspects of the relationship? You know, what India has been able to do, for example, the $1 billion soft loan, converting 20 million out of it into a grant, opening up Indian market to 46 categories of 47 categories of Bangladeshi garments, multiple visas to Bangladeshi traders, businessmen, etc. Are we emphasizing these adequately, you think?
I think, yeah, as I said in the beginning, we have done a lot. We should not forget that, and these are well known and are discussed at various forums and things like that. But nevertheless, I think the land boundary agreement is a historic agreement which is settling something which has been pending for several decades.
Where you've signed thousands of maps, but we need to take a break at this juncture. We'll be back with this discussion after the break. Don't go away. Welcome back. We are discussing the current state of India-Bangladesh relations. Ambassador Sikri, before we went on the break, you wanted to say something.
Yes, I wanted to say, actually I wanted to agree with you that actually we have not only not done Teesta and land boundary, but we are allowing it to become a political football in Bangladesh. And I agree with you that we should actually, knowing that for the time being it's difficult to do these two, focus on other aspects and bring those to the attention of the Bangladesh people. Because it's very important to do that and let them not think that these are the only two things that India has led Bangladesh down. It would be disastrous to go into the next elections in Bangladesh, which are, I think, going to be held earlier than our elections. Disastrous if the people there are allowed to make this, the BNP is able to take advantage of this. This is wrong. And I think that one more point I want to mention, that similarly the war crimes trial, which I think is very important that it is actually happening there. But again, in Bangladesh, the issue of religion has come up because of that. And the people opposing the war crimes trial, the Hifazat-e-Islam and so on, and the Jamaat Islami, they are actually saying that the war crimes trial, the anti-religion, the people doing the crime trial, the anti-religion, the Shahbags where people are kafirs and so on. So this is also not good or healthy for the next election. So these two aspects are very important.
I wanted to ask you something different, Ambassador Mukherjee. There have been corporation elections in 5 corporations in Bangladesh recently, and Awami League has been completely wiped out in these elections. Now, India is unlikely to be an issue in corporation elections. But 6 months later, when the general election takes place, do you think by not responding adequately to Bangladeshi overtures, by not signing the Teesta interim agreement or the land boundary agreement, do you think India may also end up contributing to any anti-incumbency that exists against Awami League and therefore pave the way for BNP and Jamaat-e-Islami?
No, I think you are absolutely right. Let me put it this way. I don't think India would in any way be a determining factor.
Contributing.
But as you said, it would be a contributory factor. And certainly it would be said that while the Awami League has delivered on our major concern, that is security, India has failed to deliver on 2 of the major political concerns of Bangladesh. What we have discussed so far, I think, is absolutely valid. India has tried to go a long way in some other areas of connectivity and economy in terms of loans, grants and so on. But I repeat what I said earlier, that these 2 issues are politically charged.
Okay.
And if we are not able to move on this, we shall be contributing negatively to the Awami League's prospects in the elections.
Mithil, Sheikh Hasina is expected to come to India, so we hear either in August or in September. And as somebody said, she comes here with the million knives out for her in Bangladesh. Now, what can India do which she can then take back and showcase to her, to her constituency that, look, I'm not a pro-India person. We actually need a good relationship with India, and this is how India is reciprocated. What can we give her? What can India give her?
I think it's essential that at least one, if not both of these pending issues, the Tista and the land boundary agreement, should be delivered. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for her to come and to go back with any sort of positive outcome from her perspective. Apart from cooperation and security, she has also given a big breakthrough in transit, which was always an issue that was pending for many decades. And recently the president inaugurated the Palatana power project in Tripura. That was only possible because all the heavy equipment transited through Bangladesh. Otherwise it could never have happened. And this is a big breakthrough. As Veena mentioned, unfortunately now progress on this has got linked to Tista. But nevertheless, it's in writing that Bangladesh has agreed to make available Chittagong and Mongla ports to connect the railway lines from Tripura into Bangladesh, to build a bridge over the Feni River, also connecting Tripura to near Chittagong. These are important developments which have huge long-term implications. Yeah. So again, security, transit, two big deliverables given by Bangladesh. We need to also reciprocate with these issues which are important to Bangladesh.
Okay. Mr. Sikri, do you think India is relying too heavily on Sheikh Hasina and Awami League to stabilize the relationship with Bangladesh? And how difficult would it be for India, or how easy would it be for India to deal with all the shades of political opinion in Bangladesh?
I think that relations between India and Bangladesh must transcend political parties and political personalities. That is important. But what is very important is the value systems. What India is looking for and hopes to have in Bangladesh is a democratic, secular, stable and prosperous nation. And this is what these issues and these value systems is what we have to support.
But that's Awami League.
Well, it could be Awami League, it could be Shahbag Square, the people, the Ganajangran Manch, it could be many others. So I don't think it's a question of personalities. And the issue, the unfortunate part of what is happening in Bangladesh right now is that whereas in the last elections, India was not a political factor, in these elections, inevitably, India is becoming a political factor.
We are running out of time. Last word to you. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Last word to you, Mr. Mukherjee. How can India restore Bangladesh's confidence in this relationship? What can be done now? Considering you've said that it's very important to do Tista, important to do land boundary, but suppose they cannot be done, what signal can India send that, look, we value this relationship, but there are domestic compulsions because of which we are unable to deliver just now?
I wish I could answer that positively, Bharat. But you see, the standard charge against India among the neighbors, and particularly in Bangladesh, is that we do not deliver on our promises. This is not new. Now, it's not valid all the time. But here, I'm afraid on these two issues, we are not able to deliver. Then I think mere words would not suffice. Okay. The government has to be seen to govern and to take decisions regardless of some political costs in order to deliver what has been promised.
Okay, we've run out of time. I would like to thank all of you for coming here and analyzing Indo-Bangladesh relations for our viewers. I hope we'll have you again, and next time probably we'll have some good news on these two agreements. That's all we have for you today. We'll be back again next week with another interesting issue. Till then, goodbye.